Hello and welcome, I'm Gord Graff. Now that I have the HD TV, the Blu-ray player, the PS3, the Wii game, and assorted audio CDs, I need a place where I can store these discs and have easy access to them. So here's the design I've come up with. It sits a mere 7 3/4 inches out from the wall. It's 45 inches tall and 11 1/4 inches wide. It holds all the media that I need it to hold. Now, let's go and build one. Before I can start this build, there's a couple of things I wanted to touch on. One is that generally speaking, you're never going to find a piece of wood that's 11 inches plus wide. If you do, it's pretty rare. So I've taken the time to mill and joint and edge glue these two pieces to create the back of our project. The other thing I wanted to touch on was the material. Now I chose lacewood, Australian lacewood, for this project simply because it's just so visual. It's a beautiful wood to work with. And once the finish goes on, it's absolutely stunning. Well, now that we've cut our parts to length and to width, it's time to lay this project out. What I've done is I've taken a few minutes to mock one up in pine so that you'll be able to follow along a little easier. Now, the nice thing about this design is that it allows for storage of Blu-ray, regular DVDs, PS3s, the Wii game, box sets, and even CDs. This project is pretty straightforward, and if there is a difficult part in this project, it's in the layout, and it's not that difficult. Generally speaking, what we have here is shelves at a 90-degree angle to themselves, in here, all the way up the chain, positioned perfectly on a back. So let's take a look at how we lay this out. Before we begin our layout, we need to know one simple thing, and that is, what is this angle? From the edge here to this piece here. Well, that angle is 45 degrees. Now, there's a number of ways of measuring and marking that 45 degrees. You can use a combination square, or you can use a digital square. You can always get these type of squares from a business supply place. And you can get the regular adjustable square that's marked out in 360 degrees. I've done a number of these and I've created a little jig I'd like to show you. It makes layout a lot simpler. Now that the back is on the bench and our back is 11 1/4 inches wide by 45 inches long. The shelves are 11 inches long by 7 inches wide. There's a critical measurement we need to think about here. And that is how far up from the bottom to the center of the first shelf. That's one. The next thing that we need to consider is the fact that these shelves are from center of the shelf to center of the shelf 9 inches wide. That's critical. That measurement of 9 inches is critical, and here's why. Typically what you could do is we need to come up on our board from the bottom 11 1/4 inches. That's the center of our first shelf. Now I can take my combination square, place it on the edge, and mark a line. That works. But we run into the problem of measuring, and there's always a chance of making a mistake. So what I've done is I've made a little jig. This jig consists of a 3/4 inch thick pine cleat and a piece of 1/4 inch flooring. Interestingly enough, it is exactly 9 inches wide. The same measurement from the center of this shelf to the center of this shelf. Now watch. I place my cleat up against my stock. I bring the edge of the 1/4 inch plywood up to my 11 1/4 inch mark, and I strike a line. Without moving the jig, I strike a line on this side. And guess what? The center of this shelf and the center of that shelf have just been marked. I need to do one more. So I'll move my jig along to this line, and then I'll strike the third one. And there you have it, perfectly positioned. Now, if I want to check to make sure that that's exactly 45 degrees, I'll go ahead and take my digital angle finder, place it up against the edge of the stock, and check it, and guess what? It's exactly 45 degrees. I've taken the shelves off the back so I can explain the next step. Now the next step is setting the shelves in place and getting them ready to be screwed together. Now I do this because I really don't want to make a mistake. It just takes a little bit extra time, but well worth it. So now I can check to make sure that I'm going to drill in the proper location. This one here, this one, these two, that's right. I know that this one butts up against this one, that's correct. This one butts up against this one, that's correct. This one butts up against this one, that's correct. And I have a little end piece for there and a little end piece for there. These are 2 3/4 of an inch wide. Now I know that I'm in the right orientation. Now I have to determine where I'm going to drill my hole, or actually holes here. Now I know that I want 2 inches in here for the DVDs to sit on so they don't fall backwards. So what I've done is I've got a 2-inch stick that I can place there and check. Yeah, that's right. But more importantly, I've cut a 2 3/8 inch wide piece of pine that I will place on this edge right here, like so, and then scribe a line like that, come in 1.5 inches or so, 1.5 inches, and then 1 in the center, and I'll drill and counter bore for 3 number 8 screws. The last cut that I had to make before I can assemble this is one of the shelves. Now, I said that all these shelves are 11 inches in length. Well, they are, except for one shelf, and that's the shelf at the top. The gap between this space here and this space here and all of them is 8 1/4 inches. That's because the shelf overhangs this piece. So, what I need to do is I needed to cut this shelf from 11 inches down to 8 1/4. I've done that. I've marked all my joints. Now I'm ready to pre-drill and screw it together. Now that the shelves are assembled, I've taken them and put them on the back, aligned it properly to our previous marks. Now I'm ready to mark for holes to be drilled into the shelves from the back side. Now, one of the things I wanted to speak to you about just for a moment is these holes, the countersink, counterbore holes that I've drilled into the shelves. I've taken the drill press, put in a plug cutter, cut a series of plugs out of some scrap lace wood, and when I'm ready to assemble this, I'll put glue on the plugs, insert the plug, tap it into place. Once it dries, I'll cut it off with a flush trimming saw, sand it flush, and you won't even know it's there. Well, now that I've attached the shelves to the back, the next stop, the hardware. The hardware couldn't be easier. This hardware is 3/16 inch diameter. It's a shelf divider from Lee Valley. It's 5.5 inches across, 6.5 inches long. The thing is, I don't need all of this 6 inches. What I would like for this to do is I'd like for it to be 2 inches above the surface of the shelf to hold the DVDs in place. And I want to set it into the shelf by 1/2 inch. So I need to cut these at 2.5 inches. Now that the chrome dividers are cut to length, it's just a matter of drilling a pair of holes in each shelf to house these dividers. Now I suppose you could mark them out one at a time. I've always felt that if I have to do a multiple of anything, that a jig is worthwhile building. This one happens to be 3/4 by 3/4 inch steel, and it's a simple matter of setting it into place flush with the front edge of the shelf, clamping it there, taking my drill that has a drill stop on it. This will allow the drill bit to pass through the steel and into the shelf 1/2 inch. Now you can make these out of hardwood, that's not a problem, but after using it for one of these, you'd find that the holes would get rather sloppy. Now these shelf dividers are nothing more, nothing less than a friction fit. And there we have it. It's that simple. Well, that's pretty much it for the assembly. The only thing left to do is plug the holes, sand it, glue it, and put a couple of coats of finish on it. So after 3 coats of oil-based polyurethane, it's now ready to be hung on the wall. I now have a place where all of my media is easily accessible. It's time to watch a movie. I'm Gord Graff. Thanks for watching.